How you doing, Alex?
I'm great, Yusuf. How's it going?
Smiling all the way because of the beautiful weather outside.
Of course.
So, Alex, I want to ask you a few questions. You know, what spurred you on to come out to Qatar, apart from the football?
Well, to tell you the truth, it was fully the football.
It was.
We've had this trip planned for about 2 years now. Prior to coming, obviously, there was a big uproar in the media, and you know, it didn't really put us off. We were just like, oh right. I didn't really look into it too much. You know, little slight ones that I did have, completely abolished by the time I came. You know, we've had an excellent time.
The first, your claim to fame, actually, but not yours, but ours. Our perception of you was when you made that video. We
got interviewed by TalkSport, and it was only by the radio station at first. So anyway, we'd done, you know, a radio interview, and apparently TalkSport, they said they had loads of people, you know, messaging and saying, you know, what's this all about? What, you know, really intrigued with the story. And then we ended up bumping into the same guys again later that evening, and they went, you know, could you do that interview again, but this time on the camera? And the chances of, you know, there was about 60,000 people there. I don't know how we've bumped into him again, but it, you know, that's it, you know.
Literally, you're outside, you're thinking, where can we go? And you bump into this guy, this Qatari guy.
What it was is we befriended them earlier in the day. You know, we just bumped into them. They said, you need anything while you're here? You know, you want to know anything? Or, you know, you're a bit unsure. You know, if you just being friends, if you need anything, just give us a ring. So we went out that night. We went round the Pearl in Qatar. Beautiful place. On the way back, it was where our accommodation was for the first 4 nights. There was a row of shops, and we seen him again. We never rang him. We seen him again, and we thought, what's the chances in that? We seen this bloke again outside the same shop that we seen him earlier. And he was like, you know what, I don't half love your tops, because we've got, you know, bespoke England Everton tops. I was like, I've got a friend who's got a line himself. Do you want to? He'd love to have you around. So next minute, he comes round. The Qatari, you know, sheikh comes round, and we just jump in and we're whisked away to his palazzo, his palace. You know, we're met with such hospitality, and it's just like, you know, do you want a cup of tea? Do you want cakes and all the rest of it? You know. Went round to see all like the animals and all the rest of it. So we were like, how has this happened?
Well, I can't imagine is like one of the royals in England picking up some guy from Qatar and whisking him away to the palace.
No. Maybe
I was just thinking,
maybe Prince Harry, like, but that's about
maybe,
it.
Maybe. Obviously, that was one of the first episodes, and that's how everyone got to know you. And then we bumped into you in Souk Waqif. We were inviting people to understand Qatari culture, and ultimately, which is linked to Islam, of course, because a lot of people have got a lot of stuff in their head about Islam and Muslims. So, and you're very spiritual yourself.
Very spiritual.
Is that reawakened within you some sort of need to kind of link yourself? I mean, religion comes from the term to link.
Yeah.
To link is religio, to link yourself to something other than just cars and houses and get a wife and get kids and you know, get old and then retire and die. You know, I mean, you know. So, is it awakened within you some sort of need to really kind of find yourself? You know, because I know you like that anyway, right?
Yeah, that's it. Well, I'd probably say that has probably been my favourite part of the experience. You know, all the materialistic stuff aside, I've, you know, seen a different side of Islam, really. And, you know, from what I thought of Islam, I've never explored the religion. I'd say a few years ago, I was a lot like a lot of Brits. I was, you know, stuff was getting put in the media, and I was like, you know, just following things that I didn't explore myself. I'd only seen one side of the story with certain things. So for me, you know, that's all been dissolved on this trip. You know, my spiritual experience, I've been finding God and getting to know God the past couple of years. The story, how it goes really, like, so I was born a Christian. you know, went to a Catholic school, you know, got brought up doing communion and confirmation, all the rest of it. But I never would go to mass on a regular basis. I wouldn't pray on, you know, on my own. So then I just fell out of touch with God for years, and I just, you know, I was sort of just lost. And it wasn't until I started, basically I got a job through engineering, and I really didn't enjoy it. I thought that's what I wanted to do because my dad, you know, done that, and I thought I want to fill his boots sort of thing. Yeah. And it wasn't until, you know, I was started looking into entrepreneurship and trying to get out of that I started, you know, stumbling upon like spirituality and, you know, how it contemplates, you know, your success and all the rest of it and finding God. So I've been exploring for the past few years. I've not been exploring, you know, through a mainstream religion, but just taking bits of different cultures and applying Eastern philosophies, Western philosophies, and just merging it into my own little belief. You know, while I'm here, I just brought it on myself to learn about Islam and learn about how, you know, you do it on a vast scale. You know, to be able to sit down with Muslims and pray and just be in touch and talk about our beliefs and share stories.
Yeah. What are your take-home messages to people who are watching? They might be Muslims, they might be non-Muslims. You know, what's your take-home message to people that do have apprehensions about looking at faith and looking at particularly Muslims and Islam?
For the past couple of years, when I try and, you know, speak to my friends about, you know, my beliefs or, you know, what I stand for, if there's no fire to start, then there's no use in me pouring fuel on it. I think you need to find God on your own journey. You know, even beliefs about other things, you need to, you know, you find your wisdom through yourself. And, you know, there's all good, you know, me telling someone and trying to teach someone, but if they've got no spark at first or no sort of foundation to build, you know, little bit more advanced stuff that I'm trying to tell them, then there's no, it's hard, you know. So I've stopped trying to preach, and because 9 times out of 10 it just ends in arguments. And what I would say to people is, I'd be lost without God. I'd be lost without my faith. Like, I think it's so easy in today's day and age to get really caught up mentally, and, you know, when you start thinking negative thoughts, and it spiral out of control so quickly. So, you know, things like...
But people have negative connotations of religion now because of our previous experiences with some of the authorities around religion in Britain. My mum was a Catholic, and she, you know, she was kind of abused by in the, you know, in the school that she went to, and then so she's gotten out, and a lot of people had that experience. That doesn't mean to say that they have to leave a spiritual path altogether. I always say that, you know, but you still live in here. You still look at the world around you and say, wow, what an amazing world, you know. Of course, who created that? You know, just like when we look at Aston Martin, and we look at Aston Martins and we think, wow, that designer was awesome, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, but why is it that do you think people, when they're on their own and they're at home and they kind of, you know, they do have those thoughts still?
I think it's, you know, we live in a world of instant gratification and, you know, materialism and distractions. So it's so easy to, you know, I know a lot of people like, in today's society chase pleasure, and it's so easy to distract yourself from, you know, the truer meaning of life. So, you know, when people say, you know, I don't need God, because they're distracted by all the stuff, all the other things that's going on, all the other things that you can say, you know, that's beautiful, and I really like that, and oh, we've got a new top and all the rest of it. That's what it is. I don't think people find God necessarily when things are going good. I think they find God when they're in, you know, a low place in life. And then, you know, they start learning and start finding answers from external factors.
As human beings, as a big family of human beings, we all share 99.9% of things. We agree on most stuff. we do the same stuff. We might, with different skin colors, different backgrounds, different parents, different, you know, walks of life and stuff like that. But ultimately, we all know that there's a creator.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to go back to that creator. Anything that's created ultimately is the responsibility of the one that created it. So it makes sense we're going to go back, right? And then in terms of, and I think you and me totally agree on that bit. The question is, and obviously one has to do good, but how do you know what good is?
Yeah.
So,
and I think
that's the big question. And that's where you need books.
Yeah.
And you need prophets.
And a rule book.
Yeah, you need a book of instructions like we've mentioned before.
We have.
And we've had these discussions before, haven't we? But this is kind of like, I just wanted to have this because I'm just so interested in this whole thing about bringing spirituality back to life. Because, you know, even in language, in England, if you remember your grandparents, and the grandparents, you ask your mum and dad, they would have been using God in their everyday language, every day. God bless you, God be with you. And these words have now changed to bye and hi and yo and touch bruv. And, yeah.
That's it.
And that's so ultimately, we are religious, we are spiritual, but we just need to find out what is that body of evidence and knowledge which can help us, you know, is it the Bible, is it the Torah, is it the, you know. So you know very well what we do, right, is we look at those books and we say which ones of them have been memorized, preserved. So, as you know, the Quran is memorized. We've just been in the mosque, haven't we, praying, and the guy recited a fairly long, you know, part of a chapter. And he's memorized that. He's memorized the whole of the book. So it's memorized. This is the thing that when we're looking at, of course, there are many elements of truth, and we have to accept the truth in those earlier books and those earlier prophets, all of them. But the issue is what is preserved now? And that's it. So that's what we have to take.
And I think when people...
What's your thoughts on that?
You know, put certain religions in a negative light, they pick out intricacies and they say, well, why would it do that? You know, they do that. You know, that's not what it's all about. You don't have to follow, you know, the books of religions word for word for word. Obviously, it's good practice. However, you know, there's certain things in certain books that aren't practiced today, and in today's day and age, in today's culture, it's not socially acceptable. So, you know, I think if you read some of these books and pick out, you know, certain moralities and ethics which do overlap from different books, by the way. You know, from me speaking to you know, the people we've met on this trip, we share the same ethics, we share the same beliefs. We just you know, talk about them differently or practice them differently. I
think it's because the Quran is written in Arabic. Earlier books have now been translated from Greek, from Hebrew, Aramaic, Hebrew, and then into English. And we've only read the English version. So we think, well, hold on a minute. Makes more sense that I should be a Christian because it's in English, right? But it wasn't delivered in in English. One of the people that I know very well said, Mum was saying, why do you want to go? She was a Muslim. She's decided to be a Muslim. She said, why do you want to go to all of that? Those Arab religions. And she said, well, where do you think Jesus was from? Rotherham. You know, I thought it was brilliant. That was just such a brilliant answer. You know, and then she started to read about Islam, because Islam actually is the latest version of being a Christian, but taking certain elements out. And that's just worshipping God, being good to you, and you know, the 10 Commandments of Moses. And all of that has just come forward here, and it's a preserved model here. And that's why you get a lot more Muslims who are praying around the world, a lot more Muslims who are able to talk about their religion, and they're not shy to talk about religion, whereas we, back in the UK now, I find it difficult to talk about. Like you said,
I've never talked about it, you know, with my friends, really. you know, discuss like meditation and stuff like that. But in terms of, you know, the big questions in life, it just doesn't really get brought up. You know, we want to keep your mouth shut.
We grew up with Abrahamic messages and Moses and Abraham and Jesus, peace be upon them all, and John the Baptist, and you know, all of these stories, biblical stories. We grew up with them every single day, and that's completely gone now.
But I think, like, you know, in terms of like the curriculum in, you know, primary schools and high schools, like I went to a Catholic school, you know, you're told to pray, but you're not taught why to pray.
Exactly.
You're not taught how to pray. You know, you're not taught like the importances of praying. And, you know, I've only just learned that on this trip, like the scientific side of praying and how much it actually benefits you mentally. And there's actually a lot of scientific evidence to back that, you know, it clears your mind and it releases negative energy from your forehead when you do the salah and stuff like that. So that, you know, there's science attached to praying. We just think, you know, there's something we have to do before lunchtime. So I think if you told every child how to pray and how to meditate, I think we'd be living in a very different country or even world, you know.
We've got this preserved scripture, which is, I feel sad that a lot of people do turn their back on it.
And I think that's why a lot of, you know, how like the respect and the hospitality and all the great things that we've been talking about is so different over here in the Middle East. It's because, you know, in the UK, when a child is born, you know, they're grown up by the parents and by the state through school. You know, if we're not taught, if we don't teach them the rules of how to live a happy and, you know, a good life, which is, you know, how to give and, you know, all the respect side of life. If you're not taught that, then, and if the parents neglect the children, then that child's going to grow up to be lost and not know the importances of life. However, when you come to the Middle East, if you put a book in front of someone and say, right, that's, and I know obviously the parents over here do teach the children as well when they teach them, you know, how to read the Quran. However, if you give them the book, which is in, you know, every room in the Gulf states, it's like, well, that book is how to live a good life, and that's, you know, that's how you are good, and you know, I always say when you do a good deed, you know, 10 good deeds will return back to you. You know, if it's in the same day or, you know, later.
Well, that's actually, that's quite amazing, because that is true. That's from Islam. If you do a bad deed, you make an intention to do a bad deed, and you don't fulfill that bad deed, you don't get punished for it, right? You get a good reward for it, because you haven't done it. But if you do a good deed, you get 10 rewards. 10. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been an awesome discussion, but in Qatar, I mean, your overall experience of it? I would say Islam, definitely Islam, because for me, I've seen a completely different side of something that, you know, at first I didn't know nothing about, but I've seen, you know, how brilliant that Islam is, and, you know, how much it brings a community together, and, you know, communities around here are flourishing. You know, the way you watch a whole neighbourhood, you know, at work, doing the daily life, bang, the time comes, all get together, you know, release any negative energy, you know, thank your God and show, you know, gratitude, and then back to your day. I just think that's fantastic, and, you know, I've never thought deep enough to explore that, or obviously while I'm here and I'm with, you know, Muslims, then I do get to experience that, so that is something that I will, you know, take home. And, you know, I've been, you know, kindly gifted a Quran, so I'll read it. I've started reading a few pages. Thanks very much, Alex. It's been awesome, and this hopefully won't be the last time we'll be talking. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam.